Hi, welcome to episode 26 of The Teacher's Promise. I'm your host, Brett Hanson, and I'm proud to celebrate, inspire, and nurture educators around the world by sharing the inspiring stories of compassionate people. This week, I discussed the heart of education with one of the kindest teachers and individuals I've ever met, Cory Vandertie. Cory's dedication to his students and community is almost legendary in Northeast Wisconsin, at least to every student, parent, colleague, and administrator he's ever worked with. This episode will provide you with good advice and a good role model, but more importantly, it will introduce you to a wonderful person who loves all kids, no matter who, no matter where, no matter what. Let's get to it. So this week we have a wonderful guest, a teacher, principal, great citizen, father that I've known for quite a long time, and it's been my intention to get him on the show since the very beginning, since I first started, but he's a really busy guy with an amazing family, and so we finally got him on the show. It's my great pleasure to introduce all of you to Cory Vandertie. Welcome to the show, Cory. How you doing?
Thank you, Brett, so much. Everything's great, and it's great to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you.
Just so people know, Cory has been an extraordinary teacher in Northeast Wisconsin for a very long time in a lot of different ways, which we will get to in the show. But I'm really excited to have him here. So, Cory, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into teaching, your experience, or anything you think is interesting about your path?
All right. Well, I grew up in a rural community. I'm a farm boy, and so thankful for the opportunity to grow up on a dairy farm with my mom and dad and three other siblings. I actually have a twin brother. We're the youngest of four. And growing up on a farm, I mean, I think it laid the foundation for so many life lessons around hard work and dedication, being part of something bigger than yourselves, the importance of, sticking together. And I think that has really carried on well in my career as an educator, and laid a strong foundation. I was actually the first in my family to attend college. I graduated from UW Stevens Point in 1997 in elementary education. And another passion of mine that kind of developed starting in fifth grade all the way through my school years, with a dance education minor, which automatically made things a little bit unique as I applied for positions. I taught 14 years, teaching the Howard Swamical School District, more of a suburban school district in Northeast Wisconsin, and then predominantly in the Southern Door County School District, a more rural area, again for 14 years. Had an opportunity to go back to school through Viterbo and earn my master's degree in educational leadership, and became an administrator for the first time in 2012. Serving as a principal in the Green Bay Area Public School District at Eisenhower Elementary, and then also served for a short time in Pulaski, and then most recently as an administrator and elementary school principal in Southern Door. When I think about, becoming an educator, like many listeners, I had so many wonderful experiences with teachers growing up through, I would say, through elementary, middle, and high school. And I really felt their positive impact. I felt the warmth, the care, the nurturing that I needed. I was always the shy kid in school, believe it or not. And I would often share that with the students that I had when I was a classroom teacher. Struggled with reading all the way through fourth grade. I remember getting pulled out of class and the feeling of, not wanting to be pulled out and everyone staring at me. Where are you going? But that really changed in fourth grade, a special teacher that I had. And suddenly I just had this drive to want to read more, and discovered a strong interest in reading, and finally developed the confidence to be able to kind of just propel me through school. And I think it was even through that example where it's like I wanted to be that teacher. I wanted to help the underdogs, the kids who maybe it didn't come easy for them. And that was one another reason why I just wanted to become an educator, to make a difference. I think by the time I
Yeah.
got to high school, at the time we had a elementary school counselor, Mrs. Jan, and every year she'd organize a career day. And my junior and senior year, she had welcomed me to join to share my passion for dance. And I think through the teaching of those classes and seeing the excitement of the kids and the feeling that I had to share that with others, really solidified, like, I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to see that joy and excitement of learning, and um, share that with others. So I've always had a love of learning, as I would say, since fourth grade. Up to that point, I did it because, it was what you did, but it didn't always come easy. And I think that helped me develop a little bit more empathy for kids in elementary school as I work with them, that, hey, it doesn't have to always come easy, but if you continue to work hard, set your mind to it, have a good work ethic, like, hey, you could become a teacher like me and be teaching our future generation.
Yeah. We had a previous guest, Karen Riddle, who talked about how much she learned by helping her son, who struggled with reading when he was young, and he's a doctor, or he's finishing up. He's working through his medical school now. I'm sorry, he's in medical school. So it really is true, with the right teacher, with the right leader, with someone who believes in you, you can get over any of those hurdles. So great job. And we were just talking about empathy and having that empathy. What role does empathy or compassion play in your life? Not just as a teacher, because now you're um, a dedicated parent, but what role does compassion or empathy play in your life?
I think it's just, recognizing, I think most importantly, that I think in general in life, I mean, people want to do well. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning, regardless of their career or their task for the day, whether you're a student or an adult, and says, today I want to do as poorly as I can. I want to be miserable and I want to fail. Everyone wants to do well, to succeed, to feel good at what they're doing. And so I think just seeing that in others and recognizing that um, you can play an important role in helping them, succeed and achieve what they want to be, whether it's at a factory job, of helping them feel encouraged and that they're making a difference through the products that they're making for the lives of others to make it simpler, or in the classroom where you're helping spark a new interest in a topic that a kid is excited to learn about. I think it's seeing the
Yeah,
good in others. Um, and that's, I guess, tied back to recognizing that we all want to do well. We all want to feel appreciated. We all want to feel valued and recognized for the good that we bring to the world.
yeah, yeah. My wife is extremely empathetic. She's a always has been a compassionate heart, and when I was young, I was pretty selfish, and so for me, it's still a constant struggle. But that goal to help other people reach their potential, that goal to see joy in other people when you help them a little bit or a lot, it really is a wonderful feeling. And one of the great things about being an educator is you get to do it every day. So
Yeah, I think,
yeah,
in the we live in such a fast-paced society that, that me mentality sometimes it's easy to take over. I always joke
yeah,
that even fast food today is, not fast enough. It's got to be quick, instant gratification. And I think, when you live in that world, it's easy to um, lose that connection that you need from others. That it's not just about you, but it's really your life is fulfilled by the connections you make with other people, um,
yeah,
and how you lift them up.
yeah. So how do you was it any different for you, like lifting people, students, whether teachers as an administrator, as a principal, or students as a teacher yourself, in the different places you taught, in the suburbs of, I think you said Howard Suamico, and then the rural community of Southern Door versus the small inner city community of Green Bay? Was there a big difference? Did you notice any difference?
I mean, in general, I didn't think the kids were a lot different. I think probably the experiences that they had before they entered those school doors was what was different. And I
Yeah,
worked in more of the suburban, even Howard Swamico, and I taught Howard Elementary School. That was the highest poverty school within the district. And I think that, the kids were, like I said, were the same. They wanted to do well, they wanted to belong, they wanted to play, they wanted to learn. They may have just had that disadvantage of not necessarily being set up in those early childhood days, prior to school.
Yeah.
And I would say not because, they didn't have parents who cared or loved them, because I believe they did. I just don't think they necessarily had the resources, access to materials. I think about my time in Green Bay. When I transitioned to Green Bay, oftentimes people would say, wow, that must be a really difficult school to teach in. The kids must be really rough. And I absolutely loved my time in Green Bay area public schools. I loved the diversity. And what I found is these students that had so little, in terms of resources, materials, access to learning opportunities before school, were actually the most eager to want to learn. Um,
Yeah.
and when I think about, it was a bilingual school, so dual immersion school, Spanish, most over 50% of the population was Spanish speaking. So they were learning two languages at the same time. Part of the day was taught in Spanish, part of the day was taught in English. And when I think about, you know, the grit and resiliency that we talk about today that these kids had as kindergartners, first graders, all the way through fifth grade, I always told them, you should be proud of what you're accomplishing. You're going to leave elementary school speaking two languages, and it wasn't
Yeah.
always easy, but I applaud that student population, because I think it's oftentimes easy for students and families in maybe more affluent areas or even rural areas where there's still poverty, but it's not at the same degree, really, to take education for granted.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they forget how fortunate they are to be able to, have these learning opportunities. And yeah, it's very different. But like I said, I would say kids are kids, no matter where you go.
Yeah. I think that's really true. I take things for granted nowadays. I've caught myself last few weeks just, you know, realizing how I lose my focus. And, I have this wonderful career that I enjoy, and, my family has plenty of money. My kids are healthy and happy and everything's good. So yeah, it's really important that we do that. Um, we have some students at my school right now, more than we had in the past, from that have worked hard with either themselves or their families. They've come up all the way from Honduras to try to build a better life, and they speak very little English, and I really like saying hi to them. I speak some Spanish, not very well, but they love it when you practice their language. I'm very impressed with anyone who goes to school and learns in two different languages at the same time, because that's quite an accomplishment. So that's good stuff. What about your parenting now? I mean, the empathy, compassion. How has switching from being a teacher and a principal to being a dedicated parent of three, um, how has that changed you? How has that made you either, a better person or a different person? Because, being a parent is so much like being a teacher and vice versa. Um, how has that been for you?
I think one of the big ahas for me, because our family has grown significantly here just in the last year and a half. My wife and I decided uh, to look at getting licensed for foster to adopt. So looking at bringing kids into our home, who are looking for a forever
Excuse me
family.
1 second, Cory. I have to interrupt. For those of you out there listening, of course, Cory Vandertie became a foster parent. Of course, he adopted. Everybody who knows Cory knows that this is no surprise at all. So I just want to say, wonderful. Thank goodness there are people like you who are doing this regularly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just had to say something. Go ahead.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, I mean, I think just being in education, I think I was able to see things from a different perspective, and to see this big need out there where kids were bouncing from foster home to foster home and looking for a forever family. And my wife and I, when we got married, decided that perhaps we were going to focus our energy on identifying some children who are looking for their forever family, and why not that be us. And so I used to be that teacher, that would often, people would say, like, looking to have children in the future, be married in the future. And I would be the one to say, like, I already have all the kids I want. I looked at my class as my family. I mean, it wasn't just learning during the day. It was, attending their swim meets or their taekwondo competition or a football game. And those were my kids. I think what has really, the aha for me was, being a parent. I think it is different. I think that was something that I said, and there were times when parents would say things like, well, you don't get it, you don't understand because you're not a parent. And I kind of scoffed at that, like, of course I know, and really I didn't. And I think about in my parent role right now, I think there were probably times as a teacher and even an administrator that I probably was a little bit more judgmental than I should have been on parents, either thinking that they didn't care, or why aren't they helping their children with this, or why aren't they getting them to this parent event? This is important. So I think being a parent now, I think I've just discovered that it's, you know, while my wife and I are continuing to prepare our foster kids for the best possible outcome, preparing them for school, we know that there's a chance that despite those efforts, the students may still have challenges, whether it's academic or mental or social, emotional. So I think it's just helping me step back to say, like, we're working really hard, probably just like all the other parents that I've worked with in the past were working really hard. And sometimes despite those efforts, it still wasn't enough. So I think it's important, one of the things I've learned is just, if I was to go back to be a teacher or administrator today, is probably to be less judgmental, because it's hard to really fully understand every person's situation. And I think being a parent now has really kind of opened my eyes to that.
Yeah. My mom was a single parent, and she never went to any of my events that I can remember. I didn't have that many. I kind of judged her for that. I'm certain that some teachers did, but she worked so hard just to make sure we had enough money and things like that. I know exactly what you're saying. I try to work on that too. Try to not be judgmental and just, do my job, help the kids as much as I possibly can. So it's a really good lesson.
I think I even discovered that being a principal, especially the last several years when we were working on sub shortages and COVID, and figuring out how we were going to cover classrooms, you know, even the most basic thing like doctor's appointments. I think I was the one maybe to be more judgmental of why are they scheduling them during the day and why can't they schedule them after school. And when my wife was expecting our own biological son, you know, that was when I discovered, yeah, the doctor set these times and you can't go at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Even those little things about seeing a bigger perspective and bigger, having a better understanding that, again, it's not that anyone's doing that kind of stuff intentionally, but sometimes things are out of their control, and to have even more empathy in recognizing that, those are the circumstances and working through it and honoring that.
So what about one of the teachers that you think has done all this stuff well? Who really influenced you? Could you tell us about one of the kindest or most positively memorable teachers you've ever had? One or two, it's up to you.
Yeah, well, I feel like, I don't know if it's like saying I'm the lucky one, but I actually loved all of my teachers. I can't say a bad word about anyone. That's elementary through middle through high school. So if there's anyone out there listening that was a teacher of mine, please know that I really respected and valued every single one of you for what you contributed to my life. I would say that the one person that really stands out to me is one of my high school teachers, Mrs. Mary Grayson. She was my high school choral teacher. And I don't think I fully realized it until later in life, which I think it happens often, right? You never know who you're really impacting, because it's often not in the moment that they tell you or that what's going to happen. But when I think back to my high school years and Mrs. Mary Grayson, um, she just had such a knack of marrying high expectations, um, with a loving heart. She expected so much of us as students and as musicians, and she pushed us. And some might have seen that as, wow, she's like almost over pushing you. But I feel like she got us to achieve and exceed what any of us ever thought was possible. We could have set the bar at a certain level, and she saw even more in us. So her level was always set higher, and oftentimes we would not just achieve it, but exceed that. Um, when I was a senior in high school, first of all, I should say our school had a high reputation, strong reputation for high school musicals. That was historical for our community and just put on high caliber shows. And my senior year, actually the summer of right after I finished my junior year, she actually asked if I would serve as the choreographer for the musical Oklahoma my senior year. And when I think back now as an adult looking back, that was a huge risk, to put a high school student in that kind of leadership position. Um, I didn't have a lot of formal training. I had spent 2 summers with the kids from Wisconsin, a musical group here in the state. And a lot of the kind of dance technique, I honestly learned through that, things like tapping and clogging. And I went ahead and did it. And I think about, again, the risk that she took, but she obviously believed in me. And when I think back to those days, um, I'm just so grateful to her that for seeing something in me that maybe I didn't see myself, and would have doubted whether I could possibly do that. And that really then set the stage for me really to go on to college and select dance education as my minor, which is again a little uncommon, but had then so many opportunities that followed that to choreograph musicals for other high schools, a couple technical schools, and then even back in my hometown, serving as choreographer for different shows. So again, that love for her students and high expectations and just truly believing in me. She's definitely changed my life and my path, and so grateful to her.
That's great. So did she let you know like ahead of time, like the summer before?
She did. Yeah, she actually had
Yeah.
planted the seed. And I think, a lot of the summer I kept thinking, oh my gosh, can I do this? Can I really
Yeah.
choreograph this? And I was going to be in the show myself. So not only was I playing one of the lead characters, but I was going to be asked to teach choreography to my peers, um, which, presented some challenges in itself. Uh, but yeah,
Some
she,
people are just gifted, Cory. Some people are just gifted to be
uh,
teachers. So that's you.
you're too kind.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so, and are you still in touch with her? Do you have her email? Do you contact her? Do you Facebook with her or anything like that?
Oh yes, yep. She was actually one of the first people that I reached out to when my wife and I started fostering. Because she was kind of like my school mom. So she's been a special part of my life for many years, and she's always followed me through my education career, whether it was at UW Stevens Point and different productions I was in there. Actually, I had the opportunity when I came back to my home school, Southern Door, to teach. My first several years, we got to work together as colleagues, which was beautiful in itself too. We got to direct show choir together and multiple high school musicals that followed. So we were able to maintain that special connection, and we still keep in touch.
Well, that's great because you're going to have to get in touch with her again to let her know so she can hear this because it's going to melt her heart. I'm certain of it. She's gonna tear up if she does that at all. So it's usually I'll often ask guests to, tell us something about why people should become educators. But I mean, you've already talked about so many reasons. So I kind of want to switch this up a little bit and ask you, what do you think educators, teachers in the classroom need in order to help their students become successful? What do they need either from themselves or from the community?
I think one of the biggest things, we talk a lot today about relationships and connections. And I think that building connections with students and their families is so critical. We can develop a strong understanding of content and teaching practices and use of resources, and be good at implementing those kinds of things. But I think connections with students and families is really what is going to ensure success. The teacher feeling successful, like they're making a difference and really having impact on kids learning. um, We often talk, yeah, when I was an administrator, we talk about all behaviors communication, not to be too quick to judge a student's behavior as being, showing that they're unmotivated or that they don't care. There's always something deeper. And I think as teachers, taking the time, which I acknowledge can be difficult, but taking the time to go a little bit deeper to figure out exactly what's going on. Because I think, as I said earlier, kids want to do well. They want to be successful. So connections with kids, absolutely critical. I think about, the importance. Sometimes we focus so much on kids, but it's also connecting with the parents, getting them to be, you want to make sure that you're on the same team, that you're both there supporting the child and letting the parents know that you want to work with them. And that's not always easy. But I would encourage, I think teachers just need to take the time and invest in building that connection with families. Think of an example, of a student I had. I remember at the end of the school year, fourth grade teachers coming up to me and saying, "Oh goodness, I see Colin's on your class list for next year. Good luck with Colin, and especially with his dad." And I think Colin and his dad had a reputation all the way through elementary school of kind of making things difficult. So of course, it was my mission to figure out I'm gonna make this the best year for Colin and his dad. And it was trying to get out on the front end and not letting history repeat itself, but figuring out what can I do for Colin. And it was so exciting to see Colin grow throughout fifth grade and develop the relationship with him and his dad, and then watch him grow throughout school. He ended up being a state wrestling champion for the state of Wisconsin. And I'm so honored to say that he's a teacher himself today. And
That's
I know
great.
that wouldn't have been possible without that connection. And again, using maybe some of that negative energy and helping propel it and push it forward in a productive, positive way instead of seeing
Yeah.
it as a negative.
Yeah, that's good advice.
I
Very
think
good
one
advice.
I think one thing that also is important to me is, um, I think teachers need to remember that they have the opportunity to be the best part of someone's day or the worst part of someone's day. Um, and I know that's hard because I will acknowledge that I know I've been both. I can say I feel like I've been the best part of someone's day, but there have been times where I've not been the best part, and I may have been the worst part of that person's day.
Yeah.
Um,
So, Cory, I can imagine you being the not best part of someone's day, but it's very hard for me to imagine you being the worst part of someone's
well,
day. No, maybe
yeah, I
not
know.
best, maybe somewhere in the middle, but I highly doubt the worst. That seems unlikely. So,
Well, maybe
I'm
we're
sorry to interrupt again.
maybe we're tough critics of ourselves, but I know
I
that
think
just
you
like
are.
every
Yeah.
every teacher, I think it's important to remember that sometimes no matter how hard you try, things may not go the way you want them to be going. But remembering, if you think about what can I do today to be the best part of someone's day, and that could include, a student or a colleague. Um, I think that's really important for educators to remember, especially for students, because I often would say it's easy to be a great teacher when you're teaching kids who already get it. It's what you do with the kids who don't that really make the difference. And I think that's the difference between it being an ordinary educator or that extraordinary educator. Um, what can you pull out of your tool bag to get to those students who are the most difficult to reach?
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to that all behaviors communication. How can you go a little bit deeper to figure out what is the root, and support them from there so that they can feel that growth as well?
So, what's new for you now? You told us about your boys. You can tell us if you want a little bit more about that, or what would you like to share as we get closer here to the end of our discussion? What's new for you, and what would you like to share?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Obviously, the listeners might not be aware that I did ended up leaving the education career here this past summer, to basically be a full time, I say, play at home dad. I get to be the principal at home of three amazing little boys, all under age 2. Um, and well, it was incredibly difficult, to leave education because it literally has been my life and it's my passion. And I know that one day I will return in some capacity. I also know that family is super, super important to me. And while I acknowledge that not all families have the opportunity, for a parent to stay home with their children, I'm fortunate to be in a situation where that was an option. So my wife encouraged me and supported me to take a pause in my career and be a stay-at-home dad. So right now, I'm happy to say that the first little boy that we were fostering, we were able to officially adopt just a few weeks ago. So he's part of our
Yeah,
forever
congratulations.
family. Thank you.
Yeah,
And then we have
congratulations.
our biological son is kind of the middle child, and then we are fostering right now another adorable little boy. He just turned 7 months old. So I would say for the next, 4 to 5 years, my main priority is going to be loving them up here at home and giving them the best possible start that they can receive, and preparing them for school. And then one day returning to the school building, and whether it's in a volunteer capacity or, joining the staff once again, looking forward to that day and watching them grow and have amazing teachers like I've had, because that's it. It makes all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just so everybody's clear. It's after 24 years. You were in education for 24 years, and now you're just taking a break.
Right. Yep. 14
Yeah.
years as a 14 years as a teacher and 10 years as an administrator. So a
Yeah.
nice
So,
balance, but who knows, like I said, people joked, it wasn't going to, obviously it's unlikely a principal opening will be available at the time, but I'm so open because, I have always have been a believer that there's no unimportant role in education. So whether it's the school bus driver, the cafeteria worker, the crossing guard, the classroom teacher, principal, I mean, every position is so critical. So it kind of excites me to think, perhaps going back to be in a different position, and also probably to discover from another perspective a new appreciation for a different kind of role as well.
yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that whatever you come back to do, you will do it well and deeply, and the kids that are surrounded, they'll surround you and appreciate all your love and care, and it'll be awesome. But right now, those three little boys are the ticket. I personally really wanted to get you on the show. I think it's wonderful for us to talk about, someone like you who weaves almost effortlessly through children's lives in so many different capacities and ways, and it's always about love and care and love and care and compassion. And for listeners to show, that's the centerpiece of the Teacher's Promise, is about compassion. And we didn't really talk about it much in this episode, but that kind of compassion makes us better people. I think it's possible that maybe Cory here has so much compassion that he doesn't sort of realize it, but for the rest of us, this kind of work transforms us into something better. And so you're a great role model, and I appreciate you sharing all this stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to say to anybody before we sign off?
What I would share is some advice that I received from a high school friend, Jamie, when I was in high school, actually during the time of choreographing Oklahoma, and the burden and high expectations I felt at that time. I remember giving her just a thinking of you card, and the message inside was, on the long list of things to take care of, remember yourself. So I
Yeah.
would say to the listeners, regardless of the curriculum resource you're using, the professional development you're participating in, all those material kinds of things, just always remember that you are the most important part in the children's lives and education, not necessarily the physical tools or resources. And in order to be your best self, you need to take care of yourself, and not to feel like that's a selfish thing to do. So for any listeners out there, please add your name to the list of things to take care of, so that you can give more of yourself to your students or your colleagues or your family, and not feel negative about that. You matter, and you are the most important part in a child's life.
Yeah. It's a great way to finish the show. So, and now we've gotten to my favorite part, where I get to thank the educator. And this one is long awaited and really easy. So first, I want to thank your parents for raising you on a wonderful dairy farm in the country and teaching you how to work hard and dedicate yourselves to things bigger than yourself, because it's certainly paid off. If there's ever an example of paying things forward, you are one. So thank you to your wonderful parents, and thank you to Miss John and for what she did for you when you were young, for the Green Bay School District for bringing you in to help all those kids, and for Howard Swamico District and for Southern Door District. Thank you very much, Mrs. Greisen, for holding you to those high expectations with a large, loving, caring heart, because that's really what it's all about. High expectations and compassion and love. And thank you, Jamie, for reminding Cory to take care of himself. If there's anybody that I've known who might not take care of himself because he's always taking care of others, it is Cory Vandertie. Thank you for your 24 years of service to kids so far, Cory. Thank you for taking on the responsibility that so many of us just can't fit into our lives, to foster children, to adopt children, to bring two wonderful, beautiful little boys into the forever family, which will always be theirs. I'm getting a little choked up here thinking about it. And thank you for being such a kind, wonderful, dedicated teacher, father, community member, and person. It's rare that we meet people that are this kind. And Cory Vandertie, you were one of them. So thank you very much for being on the show and being such a good person.
Thank you so much, Brett. And thank you for inspiring Teachers Promise and helping lift up educators throughout the nation.
What a wonderful educator. I don't know that I'll ever live up to Cory's example, but that's okay. We must each care and do as much as we can, and then embrace both what we give and what we get. We don't have to be perfect or the best. We just have to do our best each day and remember that all children are our children and deserve our intelligent compassion. I really hope you join us again next time in 2 weeks when I share a compilation of my guests' funny stories from the classroom. I promise you'll love it. And whether you return or not, never forget to take care of yourself. It's the secret to a long career of taking care of others. And if you haven't done so lately, please tell a fellow educator how important their work is. Spontaneous gratitude goes a long way. Until next time.